Right. Hey, everybody, welcome back to this live episode of Think Business with Dilip Rao, right?
Rao.
Yeah, sorry about that. My phonics is horrible, Dilip. But welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you. I love talking to people who are leading mission-driven companies. So much of what you guys do is about social responsibility, shifting perspective, and raising awareness. And I'm a big fan, a big believer that the first step is always raising awareness, because the same level of consciousness that got us to where we are cannot get us to where we need to be. We all saw that in mid-March when COVID hit. But your company, you're the CEO of Sharebite, and today we're going to talk about a lot of different things. But two things I really want to kick off with you are how you get employees back to work safely, and the role that you play in that, and how you're basically setting up restaurants to get back on their feet, right? And so, give us a little backstory of the business, and then kind of how you're moving your mission as part of what we just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure. I listen to your podcast. Tremendous story that you have personally as well. So thanks to be on.
Thanks.
So happy to get right into it. I think Sharebite, as you know, and you discussed at the beginning of our live feed here, Sharebite is a mission-driven food ordering platform, and we're built exclusively for companies. So, and the mission-driven side of it, of course, every order that's placed on the Sharebite platform results in a meal that we donate via a partnership with City Harvest, right? So every time, so it's really
one-to-one.
It's a one-to-one, yeah. So you get to reframe the way that employees think about hunger, right? So when I place my order on Sharebite, I get the satisfaction of knowing that, hey, I'm working hard, I'm working late, and I got to order my own food. But someone else who defines hunger very, very differently than you and I do also got to eat, and it didn't cost me a penny more than I would have otherwise paid for the food.
Yeah.
So,
and I just want to throw in a recent study that I heard that 50 million people right now in the United States have been lining up for meals and are struggling to put food on the table. And so, I just wanted to kind of infuse more, internal purpose for those people who are listening of the importance of feeding others.
It's such a, look, every single one of our clients that I've ever had a conversation with, I end up sort of waxing poetic on this topic because it's not because it's a problem. It's like a travesty.
Yeah.
We live in an age of abundance, right? We live in the wealthiest country on earth. We live in the wealthiest city on earth for those of us who are from New York City. And the fact that even on a pre-pandemic basis, there were 500,000 kids that were going hungry every single day.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 kids that it just shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And then you have the pandemic, right? Of course, a lot of struggles across the board, right? People are struggling. They don't have food to eat, like you mentioned. Schools are closed, so kids, as you may know, their most nutritious meal of the day is eaten at school. It's school lunch, right? And
now with snow days, like in Ohio this morning, right? Ohio.
Exactly.
Shaker Heights, Ohio, and that area had a horrible snowstorm, and so they stopped meal pickup, which to many people means nothing, but to too many people means too much.
That's right. And our whole view was, my co-founder Mohsen and I met at Columbia Business School, and we're both alums of, and we quickly bonded together, and we started talking about a subject matter that we very quickly realized we're really passionate about helping solve. Yeah. And so what's unique about Sharebite is that we started Sharebite with the mission first.
Yeah.
All right. And that's what's unique about the company. And, throughout my sort of financial days and whatnot, I've seen a lot of different companies that have certain sort of give back components here and there. But what's true and true to the DNA of the Sharebite business model is we came up with the mission first. So, and we agreed that hunger at all ages is an issue, but when it's kids that go hungry, right, that's like a whole different issue, right? Because childhood hunger, if you really look at sort of, I think the pandemic has brought a lot of these, I posted on LinkedIn yesterday, these inequalities to the surface, right? Across the board, right? And you realize like how fragile that thread was in the first place. It was sort of like held together loosely. And I think what everybody in the country started to realize is that we have an inequality problem, right? But there's a disagreement on how to solve it or whose responsibility it is to do that. And I think most people can also agree that the public sector has generally, let down people. And that was the case, even pre-pandemic. That was, that's the case even further today. And so our idea and business model was really about coming up with, it was a conduit for like impact, right? Our business model was about helping align the incentives for the private sector to undertake the burden of social good. And there's a high willingness to participate in that, especially when you look at professional service companies, when you look at companies in general, the buzzwords that are being thrown around in the boardroom, and this is pre-pandemic,
right,
was all about like, hey, how do we improve our corporate social responsibility footprint? How do we, engage our employees better? How do we become better corporate citizens? ESG is another sort of term that was thrown out. And what we noticed in the early days of Sharebite was that the more companies that we had the opportunity to speak with, they all said, look, these are all big sort of like endeavors at our companies. But the ideas that get brought to the forefront all involve, of course, two very scarce resources, right? Either it's time or it's money. And oftentimes it's both. And, and there's, these are scarce resources. So there's an unwillingness by,
Well, I want to pause you for 1 second. Yeah. But in that boardroom, so I want to talk to the people in that boardroom right now.
Yeah.
And so there's time, there's money. All right. I agree with you. I'm a business coach and I get that. But where do you then in the conversation infuse heart, right? Which isn't always about profitability, which is sometimes about just doing the right thing. I just want to before you answer that question, I just want to comment one thing. About 15 years ago, I went on a weekend leadership retreat with my shul. We went to New York and we visited homeless shelters the whole time. And then we did another one in Washington, D.C., where we met with people on the Hill, et cetera, et cetera. And when we came back with my buddy Stu Dorff, we co-chaired a homeless shelter at our shul, Shared said it. Mm-hmm. And I got to know these homeless people, right, who were, very, they were homeless and they were looking for their next meal. And what I found was that a larger percentage than I would have assumed going in, right, my perception, were just like me. They were just like me, but they didn't have a family. They didn't have, one bad incident led to one bad incident, led to losing a job, led to losing a car. And I really believe that everybody is 1 or 2 steps away from being homeless and hungry, right? If you take away some of the, the family members, people that could maybe give you a loan if you're in trouble, if those people didn't exist, a lot of people would be in trouble.
It's unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people would be in trouble. So I just want to kind of bring some realness to it for a second. And then now enter the boardroom, right? Everyone's wearing suits or whatever everybody's wearing post-COVID. And how do you infuse and just kind of rewind and infuse some heart to do the right thing and maybe make it a little less, but the social impact has a bigger ripple?
So I think that's a great question. I think let me give you another perspective, right?
Please.
Maybe I'm going to attach a little bit of heart to corporate America, right? And
I like that even better, right?
And these are not things that let's face it, these are not things that generally are seen as going hand in hand, right? You hear about sort of corporate interest and whatnot, but I think all of those things have to go back, and you have to be able to go back and examine sort of the incentive structure for companies, right? And so a few years ago, I won't sort of name names here, but a few years ago there's a prominent sort of like very, very prominent person I had a chance to meet, and this was like early on when we were early on in the sort of the trajectory of Sharebite, and I made a comment about like, hey, our business model is actually about helping accrue value to every single stakeholder in our supply chain. And he's like, okay, so can you unpack that a little bit? So I said, well, every order that comes through the platform, we actually make a donation out of our own pocket, and it goes towards early in the sort of the journey of Sharebite, we had a partnership with City Harvest then as well.
Yeah.
And so we're like, look, we make a financial contribution to City Harvest, and that directly goes to help alleviate childhood hunger in local communities. And the immediate sort of response was, absolutely not. How dare you give shareholder profits away to charity? It's not your business. And I felt very strongly about it back then. I feel incredibly strongly about it today, even more stronger than I have ever have. And I think that if you really look back at what the Business Roundtable did last year, that sort of Milton Friedman-like view about like the purpose of a company is to accrue value to shareholders. I think it's so I debated, right? I said, look, I think that's a Milton Friedman way, but I'd like to take it back even further to a more classical definition of a corporation. Corpus, of course, being the root word, body of people, right? Right. And if you're going to try to look for sustainability in business practices, it has to start with your own sort of approach to business in general. And our view as a company has always been, in business, you cannot have a zero-sum situation, right? It can't be I win, you lose. Everyone needs to benefit by partnering with, so like I always say, look, there's that sort of like price to value differential, right? And when you look at that surplus, that differential, that surplus that you're able to extract from the existence of a company like Sharebite, corporate clients win handsomely, because not only do they save money, but they get to fulfill their organizational objectives by not doing anything different than what their employees already do, which is ordering food.
Yeah.
And of course, like, we haven't even gotten into what we're doing in the post-COVID world, but let's sort of put that aside for a second. Restaurants, as you very well know, and small businesses and restaurants have been struggling for years, all right? And they've been facing, rising labor costs, rising rent. These consumer platforms have been, charging them these outrageous fees that are just not sustainable.
Right.
So
even like, I heard a study once, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but you're not even turning a profit for a restaurant, give or take, for 3 years, right? I mean, it is a grueling, very, very hard business model on a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the chains, I covered the restaurant industry for a small period of time in the financial days, and those restaurants, at least at the unit level, right, at each sort of like 4-wall level, even the best run sort of restaurant operations don't fully like get to profitability. It takes some time, right? And so our view is like, look, if national brands have that much of a hard time getting to profitability, imagine what's happening at the small business level, where they're squeezed by every single sort of like at every corner, right? Rising rents, rising delivery costs, et cetera, et cetera. So our view was, by partnering with corporate clients, right? Our cost of, our customer acquisition cost, or our cost of operations is much lower because we're a software company. We're a software as a service business. So when we sign up a corporate client, they're on our platform, right? We're fully integrated. It's enterprise grade security. And every single employee uses the Sharebite platform to order their food. So as you can imagine, that is this recurring revenue stream, right, that an organization like City Harvest has never had access to before. But also, these small businesses and restaurants get to turn a profit on their food delivery for the first time in years. Right? So we get to do well and do good all in the same exact transaction. And especially in this world, I cannot think of a higher calling and a higher purpose than to help small businesses and restaurants get back on their feet because they've been ravaged by this pandemic. I was just talking to somebody at City Harvest today, this morning actually, and she mentioned to me that, the amount of like people that are going to these, community shelters and whatnot to get food, has expanded like in multiples. And they're sort of, on a day-to-day deliveries, they've kicked up, courtesy of donations, courtesy of like, corporate partnerships, sponsorships and whatnot. And I just thought that, when you hear a statistic like that, it immediately makes you think like we're doing something right? It's not just, again, look, not to sort of harp on the same situation, but like it's not just a financial contribution that we make to City Harvest. It's about doing right and doing well for all of our stakeholders combined. Right. And one thing I'm very proud of, I just want to mention, we're talking about pandemic, we're talking about stakeholders. There are so many companies that I know of that, and for their own reasons, because of the pandemic, they just couldn't stay in business, or they couldn't keep their employees, and they had to let a lot of people go, right? I count my blessings, and on our company, we're incredibly proud to say we're 9 months into this pandemic, and we haven't let go of a single employee because of the pandemic.
That's great.
Right. And not only that, we've innovated considerably on the technology side of things. And we'll talk, if we have some time, I'd love to talk to you about sort of the post-COVID stuff that we're doing. But
I want to talk about post-COVID stuff. But before we talk about post-COVID stuff, and I love everything you're talking about, I just want to kind of tap into a little bit about social responsibility.
Sure.
And I think a lot of companies, I've met with a lot of companies that get it right. I've worked with a lot of companies that are trying to get it right. And I work with companies who don't see it as something that is their responsibility. You have generations, millennial generation, Gen Z generation, who are interviewing companies on what they're doing socially, before they decide if they even want to work for those companies. And so to the companies that need to start doing more, just be socially responsible, right? In whatever lane that they choose. How does a company start that and then make it part of their culture?
So we started talking about this, and I kind of, digressed, but it's about the incentive structure, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing that you have to give credit to the investor community here is that I think, there was this watershed moment on this sort of subject matter back in sort of early 2018 when Larry Fink, the chairman of BlackRock, of course, the largest asset management company in the world, he wrote his annual letter to CEOs, and he basically wrote that, profits without purpose in the long run are unsustainable. So in other words, it was this call to action, right? Either start doing well by doing good, or don't count on having BlackRock as a shareholder in your company anymore. So when that type of sort of statement gets out there, gets put out there, there's this. That's why that the buzzwords in the boardroom that we just talked about, and that's why it's top of mind for organizations, because investors want this type of behavior, Clients demand this type of behavior. And most importantly, and this has been happening for years now, probably decade plus, your employees have been, a lot of credit to the millennials and the Gen Z sort of the demographic. They care very deeply about doing well and also doing good. Right? Yeah. And the cookie cutter approach historically has been, oh, you know what, we're going to have a tough time recruiting. Let's donate some money out of our firm's profits through our foundation, and let's send a bunch of emails and just call it a day.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that no one's actually reading those emails, right? Yeah. And it's not because they don't care about it. It's because people want their inbox to be clear of things that are not sort of, pertinent to their day-to-day, right? It's not their fault. So the very intended benefit that these companies are trying to extract from that charitable donation is largely that messaging is sort of missed, right? So what we realized, over the years was that when people stay late at the office or when the people order food, they hit the order button, they pay attention to the screen, right?
In real time, they pay attention to the real time in the moment screen, which says,
on our platform, when you place the order, it says, John, thanks for ordering from Potbelly, right?
They are really good, Potbelly.
I love Potbelly right now.
Best cookies in the world, yeah, and stuff.
Yeah, they're really good.
Sorry, that means that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So on
the screen it says,
right? It says, here's a meal, and it was donated to help feed children facing hunger in local communities. And you get.
But I just want to go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and you get to take a lot of satisfaction knowing that because your firm was using Sharebite to do that, you were able to fulfill your own kind of needs and also pay it forward.
Right. But I think what I love about that is one of the things that's important about vision, what's important about culture, is that companies talk about it every day in some way, not like a robot, but incorporated in all the things that they do. And so when you have a team of 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, thousands of people that every day throughout the day experience giving, and it's right in front of them in real time. It's not somebody getting an award at a Monday meeting, and it's not an email that goes out, like you said, that's this long with somebody's name buried. They know that they're making an impact in real time, and they can actually feel it. And I think that it's really hard for companies to figure out how to get people to feel exactly what we're trying to talk about here, which is giving back. But in that moment, even if it lasts 4 seconds in the moment before they get onto their next thing, that feeling of helping someone does not go away.
Definitely not. And that's so well said. I think it was McKinsey or another one of the major consulting companies that did a report many years ago. And they talked about like repeat exposure to this type of socially conscious behavior is essentially what it makes people feel like it's no longer just a job that they come to, but they're more, it engages the employees, in a much better way than any other sort of behavior, right?
Yeah.
It makes them feel and think much more highly of the company that they work for.
Yeah. How good is it? I mean, if you just look at like if you just look at it at just, you don't even have to go too deep at the surface. How couldn't it?
Correct.
Right. I mean, and even if someone says, all right, well, I have 1,000 employees, even if it makes 10 feel great, and then 20, and then 15, the ripple effect is enormous, that compounds in such ways that as a business coach, I talk about measuring things and the importance of measuring things. Some things can't necessarily be measured, but they can really be felt.
Correct. And, look, when people hear about childhood hunger in New York City, they're like, oh my God, is it that bad? Like, no, it's actually worse, especially post-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But like, the reason, it's not that they're like, oblivious to it. They're just unaware of the staggering statistic of, the fact that like, 500,000 kids pre-pandemic were going hungry, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what that number is now? But, people, so the first step really is about awareness, right? Our platform brings that awareness on a day-to-day basis, and you cannot strip away the mission of the company. And look, there are other companies And early in the journey of Sharebite, we used to get like, then why can't everybody else do this? They've tried, and they just haven't been able to, because I think consumers are generally very intelligent. Companies even equally intelligent, and they get it. They're like, people see this as like, hey, this was a marketing tactic. That means that it can go away at any point.
Yeah.
So when our clients, sign up for Sharebite and they switch out of their previous provider after an average of about 16 or so years of having used it, they are making a very, very deliberate and conscious decision, organizationally, right, to put their name on something that is mission driven in its DNA, and it just can't just go away tomorrow, right? And that actually ties into a lot of what we're doing in the post-COVID world, right?
Yeah.
So, look, as you can imagine, the beginning of the pandemic was like this big tsunami hitting everybody, right? Like, and we noticed that as soon as the stay-in-place orders came in, around mid-March, it was March 16th, I believe, in New York City. We made a decision, or actually our head of restaurant operations sent out an email blast to our restaurants. So about 4,000 restaurants on our platform. And we said, we know what is about to happen, right? We know the hardships that may or may not come of it. Who knows, right? We're hoping that the pandemic doesn't last long, but we're not sure how long it'll go for. We offered, and I believe we're the first and maybe the only company in our space that's ever told our restaurants and offered our restaurants and lived up to it, that we're going to waive all of our commissions.
Wow.
To every single one of our restaurants. So through the worst of the pandemic, right, between especially March through May, we did one other thing, right? We reached out to our existing corporate clients and we said, look, we're a software as a service company. We're a technology company. And while we would love to produce PPE, because that's what everybody needs, it's not sort of our core competency, it's not our forte. But we can do something else that is within our reach. And that is, when we talk to our friends who worked at hospitals and, were caring for patients during the worst of the pandemic, we heard everything from, look, people are working around the clock. PPE is an issue, of course. They don't have time to eat. They're taking public transportation home because they can't afford to, sort of like any other type of transportation. They're putting themselves in harm's way just to care for other people. And that's such a noble act.
It's huge.
And so we at Sharebite made a decision, you know what? We're going to reach out to our existing corporate clients and say, look, if you guys have a budget, if you have anything, we're requesting that you place food orders on our platform. And we're going to help route those food orders, not only to the small businesses that are still open and are capable of servicing, like in a post-COVID manner, individually wrapping these boxes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we're going to have this food delivered to frontline staff and first responders, right? So during the depths of the sort of the pandemic, the first wave, we sent between March and May, I believe it was like $80,000 worth of food orders were placed and routed directly to, all the sort of the major New York City hospitals: NYU, Bellevue, Harlem, Montefiore, Weill Cornell, Mount Sinai. I mean, you name it, Elmhurst.
Right.
And this doesn't include like ambulance staff, first responders, fire staff, right? We sent all of these food orders, and it's because our clients were generous enough to actually get their employers to do that. There was one firm, and I'll mention it here, Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, one of our clients. Their employees not only banded together, but they said, you know what, we have this car service, this in-house car service. So if people at hospitals need to go home late, call this number, have them call this number, and one of our black cars will pick them up and take them home, right? What a noble contribution, right?
Amazing.
this is the type of stuff that like is heartwarming because it brought New Yorkers together. And, I saw this happen during 9/11 and, sort of other times as well. But look, true to the mission-driven DNA of Sharebite, we made a decision to do what's right? We kept all of our staff. We never let go of a single person. This team banded together, right? The way that I'm incredibly proud of the culture that we have at Sharebite and the team that we've built. Every single person at the company banded together and said, we're gonna band together. We're gonna solve this problem. We literally have the best team on earth, and we could not replicate this team again, even if we tried, right? And one thing is, we started calling our clients too, and we were like, look, when you reopen the office, what's top of mind for you? And we heard everything, right? We heard clients say, look, there are really two things that are top of mind for us, right? At the senior level, at the C level, and at the sort of the facilities and day-to-day administration operations side, which is we're afraid to bring our employees back to the office. They're afraid to come back, right? And so the number one thing that's top of mind for us is, how do we bring our employees back to the office in a safe and sort of compliant manner, right? How do we reduce the variability associated with traffic coming in and out of our building? And let's face it, the number one reason why people go up and down elevators, crowded elevators, is to go get food.
Yeah.
So they're like, we don't want 100 different delivery people waiting in our lobbies. We may not reopen our cafeteria because that's another sort of risk for infection. What can Sharebite as a platform do to help us sort of prepare for that? And so we've built this stuff out already. We were already doing this at select few clients here and there. And we said, you know what, we're going to roll this out at a much larger scale. So what we did was we had a press release a couple of weeks ago about Sharebite stations. And these are contactless, these are sort of like shelving units that get put up in your offices on your floor, but it's powered by our technology. Yeah. So every day, your firm gets to gets to select post-COVID curated restaurants. They get to limit the amount of restaurants being offered to you. And as long as that order is placed by a specific cutoff time, all of the food is delivered to your office in one delivery.
I love it.
Right? And it's delivered in one delivery, and it's put and staged on every one of the shelving units that I just mentioned, the Sharebite stations. And you can go pick up the food on your floor without ever having to leave the office, without ever having to put yourself in harm's way. You can socially distance, you can do all that stuff. So that's contactless group ordering.
Yeah.
The second thing that we did was—
I just want to comment real quickly on that. Very forward thinking. Companies today are, I think, very forward thinking, and you have no choice but to think about what that plan B, what that plan C, what that plan D looks like. And even when I hear you want to roll it out, it sounds so simple. I know a lot of thought process went into it, so I'm not taking away from that. But with a lot of brainstorming and thought process, comes out something very simple. And so I just want to encourage people that now is a great time to sit and brainstorm and bring great minds together to think about how, if anything is very complicated, how you can roll things out in a simple way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the last thing that I just wanted to mention on contactless, I think the era of those trays of catering that companies use, right?
Everyone's drooling over the food, right?
It's a bygone era, right?
Yeah.
It's just not feasible in this environment because you just can't socially distance. Yeah. So
and it's unsanitary. I mean, if you really look at it, people breathing over things, for during flu season, and you turn around and someone has their hand in the, yeah.
Listen, you said it, right? I don't want that, right? Yeah. I wouldn't eat that for myself. I want to know that the food that arrived at my office with my name on it,
right,
is sealed by the restaurant,
right? Amen to that.
A restaurant, not only that, a restaurant that is post-COVID curated and vetted by a company like Sharebite.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've been doing this since the beginning of the pandemic. Because if our restaurant partners are good enough to deliver to hospitals and frontline staff, they're surely good enough to deliver to our corporate clients too.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, we've been doing all of these things, and we're incredibly proud of what we've built, what this team has built. Not only, were we able to sort of look, there's light at the end of the tunnel now, right? With the vaccine and hopefully vaccinations sort of, I think as early as next week that they'll start.
Right.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. But when the book about Sharebite is one day written, the team, this core team that we've had throughout this pandemic that has been constantly, they're working around the clock, innovating, listening to our restaurant partners, listening to corporate clients, listening to what's happening in society, and really tying all of those incentives together in one easy to use, easy to implement package solution, whether it's Sharebite stations or the other business that we previously had prior to the pandemic, which is all of managing all the overtime, food ordering and catering that's happening at your company. Today, we're about to emerge from the crisis as a company that is, we've grown through the pandemic, we've grown about 400%, right? Our bookings have grown about 400%. And we're incredibly thankful and proud and privileged to be in that position. But, the second point that I was making earlier about what companies really want is they're taking note of everything that's happening in the world too, right? And the second equally important thing that's on their mind is, that old saying, like, never let a crisis go to waste.
Correct.
Right? There are a lot of companies, and we hear this directly. They're like, look, our CEO or our managing partner has told us that when we bring our employees back to the office, positioning the firm as a better corporate citizen is number one priority in their. And fortunately, Sharebite has been singing this story, telling this story, singing this song for over 5 years now, on year number 6. And unfortunately, it took a pandemic for people to realize that, hey, we have to do this. And better late than never. But people are going to come back to the office. People will come back, and what's going to happen is they're going to look back and say, wow, my favorite coffee shop that opened, a year ago that I was really starting to like, or my favorite pizza store around the corner, they're not around anymore, right? Yeah. These are restaurants that are shut down forever. And it's a tragedy, right? Restaurants, people don't realize this, we take it for granted, but restaurants are actually part of the cultural fabric of what makes cities, especially New York City, what it is today, right? And yes, we have a nationwide footprint today. We service New York City, Irvine, California, Charlotte, Bay Area, Chicago, right? And growing, of course, in Texas. But you cannot forget the fact that restaurants need help today, right? The CARES Act, all these things have, they don't have anything to help restaurants sort of get back on their feet. So we're doing our part. Our corporate clients, by working with Sharebite, are doing their part. By implementing a Sharebite station, companies that are using catering or had other sort of house accounts or whatever they had, the response to Sharebite stations, the announcement that we made two weeks ago, has been overwhelming. Like, we have more sort of demand for Sharebite stations than we can, sort of keep up in installing at different companies. So anyway, look, emerging from the crisis and signaling to the world, your clients, your investors, your LPs, your employees, the community, that you as a firm are going to be on the right side of history, has been top priority. And one thing I'm very proud of is the fact that we as a company, Sharebite, are helping companies address not only that, but also employee safety as people come back to the office and return back to normal.
I love everything that you're talking about. I think what you're doing is beautiful, and I just want to go back to the one-on-one giving, right? I mean, just, you're talking about a lot of stuff. You're doing a lot of amazing things, a lot of things that companies, I think, will listen to and be inspired to do. The processes, the systems, the brainstorming, etc. But the giving back and the one-on-one, which really, I think, almost goes back to Tom's shoes, right? Who really kind of brought that to the forefront, because that giving really does something. I just want to read this, because according to the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins and his doctoral thesis, right? The coronavirus, according to the book, I'm not claiming this is to be me, but according to this book, the coronavirus has a vibration of 5.5 hertz and dies above 25.5 hertz. I don't even know what that means, but
wavelengths.
But with this also talks about that generosity is at a vibration of 95 hertz, and gratitude 150, and compassion 150 or more. And so when you look at things just energetically, from a frequency standpoint, from a vibration standpoint, if this is true, it goes back to what we started off in the beginning. The same level of consciousness that got us here will not get us to where we want to go. You talk about being on the right side of history. We all need to raise our vibration. We all need to raise our frequency. We all need to raise our level of consciousness to do what is right. And, you are talking a lot about that, not only to me as a company, but as a spokesperson, to get into the DNA of people, that dignity is really important, and that a social responsibility part of every culture is critical, not only today, but for the many, many, many decades in front of us. And I can't wait to see what the millennials and the Gen Zs do and take this to the next level as they raise their consciousness, frequency, and vibration as well.
Absolutely. We're fortunate to have, I guess it's a little bit of, it's our generation too, but, Gen Z, millennials, Gen Z are the most, sort of charitable and giving than any other sort of generation ever known, or at least recorded, at least, based on what I've read. And it's true, because this is the generation that has been pushing companies to take stakeholder-driven sort of like approach, rather than a shareholder winner-take-all driven approach. Yeah. And that gives me a great amount of faith. Excuse me. That gives me a great amount of faith in the country in general, and the way that we're headed. Look, I made a comment with my team. I tend to have these like amazing one-on-ones and very inspiring, conversations. Yeah. And I made a comment, a couple of weeks ago that the phoenix shall only rise from the crucible, right? And if you kind of like think about that, it's like, we sometimes forget that part of becoming resilient is really going through your own sort of struggles and journeys in life, and being able to overcome them. And, when we make hiring decisions, we focus on those types of people that are very adept at overcoming challenges. And we don't focus on the times that they've fallen, but we focus more on the times that they've found inspiration to get back up. Yeah. And, look, we have a lot of work to do as a country to sort of repair and heal ourselves from many different things. But I think the private sector, the millennial generation, the Gen Z generation can play an incredible role here in shaping what American commerce looks like going forward. Yeah. By taking these types of approaches and pushing their own companies to take on better, more socially conscious, sort of like better corporate citizenship, better stance on corporate citizenship, and being able to, make that sort of their core focus, right? So it gives me a great amount of hope in sort of not only the next decade or or decades to come, but really for the next century. And I think if companies adapt these practices, we're all going to be better off.
Yeah, I agree.
Society will be better off. People will be better off. Governments will be better off. And we're incredibly proud to play a small part in building and striving towards a more perfect union.
I love it. Dilip, this has been amazing. You ready for a quick speed round?
Please.
All right. Favorite book and why?
Say that again. I just lost you for a second.
Favorite book and why?
My favorite book. Gosh. See, now I'm gonna like expose a lot of my. So, one thing that I'm a big fan of the Stoic Philosophers.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up Enchiridion recently, right? So I've been reading that and really trying to like. It's not an easy read, right? Because
none of those are.
Yeah. So being able to sort of have that stuff digest sort of 2,000-year-old wisdom that is very much like applicable today in your day-to-day struggles. So yeah, that's my most recent one, but I have a number of them. I mean, there's many of them back here.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm reading right now.
I'll tell you what I'm reading right now, which is incredible. This book right here, The Art of Learning. It is unbelievable. It's by the guy who the book, I can't think of the word, Searching for Bobby Fischer. It's the kid. The book's unbelievable. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
That's hard because I've, if we had a lot more time, I would tell you some stories, but I would say, it's hard to say one piece of wisdom ever, but one thing that I once heard was, in a world filled with negativity, be positive, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is positivity and gratitude are some of the greatest healers, and I think you and I can riff on those ideas based on our personal experiences at another time. But yeah, I think positivity and gratitude, and of course, we just had the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah.
Despite everything that we as a country have gone through and people have endured this year, there's still a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah.
And I think gratitude is something that it's hard to sort of always think about gratitude, but you have to be able to reflect on your day to day and figure that out. So.
And it's important. When it's dark, be the light. One of the things I do is, not every day, but most days, I keep a gratitude journal. It keeps me really, really grounded. Last question for you, Dilip.
Yes,
one piece of advice you would give somebody graduating college today?
Run your own race. Run your own race. I oftentimes, and one of my favorite roles, serving my team members within Sharebite, is really to be a player coach with them.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I hear from, some of our younger sort of team members that recently graduated from college or just a few years out. You hear these things where I don't know what it is that I want, because my friend's doing this and then she's doing that and he's doing this. And, the question is well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Right? Oftentimes we end up letting, sort of society, whether it's parents or just, friends or whatever, dictate who you are and what you should become.
Yeah.
To me, in a world filled with everybody else, be you and be yourself. And I think that, and it's the easiest thing to be, and it's the hardest thing to accept, and that's unfortunate. And so that's all I have to say there. But
Tell everybody, Dilip, tell everybody your ideal client and how they can get a hold of you.
Our ideal client. Well, before the pandemic, it used to be if you have a work-late culture,
Yeah.
And you're using another sort of platform to order your food on, it's a literal no-brainer to implement Sharebite at your office. That was pre-pandemic. Today, if you have a workplace, if you care about your employees' health and safety and well-being, especially in the post-pandemic world, reach out to us, because I promise you, we can be a game changer.
Yeah.
We service every city in the country, every major city in the country, right? We have the ability to, sort of turn on brand new cities within, a matter of a few weeks.
Right.
And installing Sharebite stations, whether your office is based in Atlanta, whether you have, 300 employees, 30 employees, or 3,000 employees, or 30,000 employees, our platform, our technology platform is incredibly scalable. And once it's implemented at your office, it is one source of truth pertaining to everything related to food ordering that's happening at your company. And whether it's your, expensing, your overtime meals, your employees don't want to put it on their credit card and wait for, a reimbursement from your firm, right? They want to be able to bill it right through the system. It's cashless. We get to do that on the platform. Employee lunches. If you want to subsidize, if you want to just install the Sharebite stations and have, and you don't want to subsidize, you want to let employees pay through their own personal credit card. All of those customizations, every single use case you can ever imagine has been built into the Sharebite platform. And reach out to us, right? We can, I think within a 10 to 15 minute conversation with our team, you will learn so much more about what every other company is doing to prepare themselves to come out of this crisis, the pandemic, and be post-COVID ready. And we have the best team on earth. They'll be able to not only do we have the best team on earth, we have the best customer operations, customer service on earth. Our corporate clients, our operations team in general, it's best in class, best in industry. You will be treated with golden gloves.
I love it.
And call it golden gloves, a white glove service.
Yeah.
You get the royalty treatment with Sharebite.
I love
So
it.
the ideal company is any company that wants to bring their employees back to the office. Reach out to us, 15 minutes. We can tell you if Sharebite's a good fit for you.
I love it. Dilip, I can't thank you enough. Your whole business, your whole platform, and you just as an individual are just completely inspiring. You prove that you can have a mission based company that is socially responsible, raises awareness, shifts perspectives, while still making money and growing your business. And the customer comes first, the giving comes first, just all the bits and pieces of it. And so I just want to thank you for putting your heart into the business. And I'm a big believer that it starts at the top, and the culture of any company, 95% of it is by the person at the top whose heart is leading. And your heart is leading the troops, and I know you have a lot of great people around you and a co-founder and things of that nature, but I'm just talking to you. So I hope more corporate leaders, managers, any leader of people hear this and just raise their level of consciousness, and can tap into their heart and use as much of their heart and their brain to grow their business, their people, and to infuse social responsibility into their company as well. So I really appreciate you taking your time today to share about everything you're doing and how much you're giving back and making a difference.
That means so much to me, John. Thank you so much. And I do want to mention in closing that we don't have a top-down culture. It's very flat, and I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve my team more so I
didn't even mean it like that, but I just mean when the owner and the co-founders and the leaders don't manage from their heart, doesn't matter if you're top down, flat, or anything. It just doesn't have the impact internally or externally, and you're bringing that, and you're a leader that people want to follow.
It's a distinct privilege and pleasure to be able to talk about what the team at Sharebite is building.
Yeah,
and I just really appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you taking time. Thank you very much. I appreciate stay on. I'm going to end the broadcast, but stay on. I want to connect with you for a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank community. Thanks very much. If you know anybody who could benefit from this, share it, leave a comment, and if you want to reach out to Dilip, reach out to him via LinkedIn, your website, email.
LinkedIn, sharebite.com, sharebite.com, and there's a form there, or you could just email us, public or hello@sharebite.com.
Right. All right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening, and share this with as many people as you can. And I never really say this at the end of my podcast, but the more people that share and get exposure to your company, the more people who are going without food get fed. So thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.